pride, passion, and pageantry of college football lives here. This is the Paul Finebaum Show, Hour One Podcast.
This might be college football heaven.
Welcome back to our program on this Monday. The football season is now over. We've seen college end, now we've seen the NFL. Let's get right to some of our headlines here on this Monday afternoon. Basketball is in the news, and were you watching over the weekend when Todd Golden's Florida Gators went to Auburn? Knocked off the number one team. They didn't just knock them off. I mean, they had a huge lead late in the game, ended up winning by double digits. And have you seen the latest AP Top 25? That didn't knock Auburn out of the race, though. But they might have a different number one a week from now. How about this? Auburn stays number one. They're at Vandy. And then the big one, the most anticipated game of the year in college basketball, and it's in the state of Alabama. Auburn going to Tuscaloosa, 1 versus 2. Not too many 1 versus 2 matchups. Remember, Tennessee and Memphis a number of years ago had one during the regular season when Bruce Pearl was at Tennessee and John Calipari at Memphis. How about going back into the history books for that one? Were you watching yesterday when our guest on Friday, Vic Schaefer, delivered on a promise to put an end to that streak? The Longhorns end a historic streak against South Carolina. We'll talk to the star player for the Longhorns a little bit later on. Super Bowl is over. DeVonta Smith ending a Crimson Tide 58-year Super Bowl shutout streak. I know the SEC did not win the CFP, but it did win the Super Bowl. Yes, we are the Super Bowl champions. We are the champions. Look at those players that played mostly at Alabama and Georgia. And speaking of Alabama, let's get right to it with our friend Nick Kelly from AL.com. Nick, good afternoon. A lot to talk about you in a minute. I want to start talking about the SEC and the Super Bowl. A lot of familiar names, and you wonder maybe why Alabama wasn't quite as good this year, maybe why Georgia wasn't, and we saw it last night on the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, don't you mean the Georgia Crimson Tide? I mean, that was a roster chock full of folks we've seen play in Atlanta for some big games. And, yeah, it had a strong Alabama, Georgia, SEC flavor. And I think for anyone who roots for those teams is probably pretty excited to see the Eagles not only win, but really just dominate the Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah, I mean, it was, everybody kept saying, can't go against Patrick Mahomes. Well, those who dared to go against him were rewarded, as it really was about the defense. I know we mentioned DeVonta Smith and Jalen Hurts, and they played well, but they were given a very short field early and often. Yeah, I mean, Jalen Hurts was deserving of that MVP award, but I think at the same time, if they could give an MVP award to a defensive line or a group, I mean, the Philadelphia Eagles show that they have a group of that caliber who just made Patrick run for his life half the time. So, yeah, really just an impressive performance by the Eagles and a lot to like. Again, if you're in SEC country, especially up front, a group that just dominated play in, play out. Yeah, I couldn't help but think about Jalen Hurts, a former Alabama player, winning the MVP. I think the first 2 Super Bowls were won by Bart Starr, former Alabama quarterback. You had Namath and Stabler, so that is not an uncommon. It's been uncommon for a long time, though. Let me get to basketball, because we just showed you in the audience the AP poll. Some Alabama fans maybe were hoping to be number one. I don't think it matters very much, considering you have the number one team in the country coming in, but just describe the vibes in Tuscaloosa right now in that state about what has been going on the hardwood. Yeah, it's the biggest game, I think, in regular season history between those two teams in this state. No other way to put it. I mean, there's no way to be better than 1 and 2. And I think what's even better than just 1 versus 2, the fact that in the coaches poll, they flipped the 2. So Alabama's number 1 in the coaches poll, Auburn's number 2. So it's 1/2 versus 1/2. So, I mean, folks were already excited. These are 2 good teams. But then you add in the fact that I mean, they're the two best teams in college basketball, and Coleman's going to be electric on Saturday, and the fact that you're going to see just such elite basketball play, you don't have to be a fan of those two teams to enjoy that game. So I think everyone is going to be getting there early, is going to be packing it out, and it's going to be fun, and we'll kind of see who really is deserving of being that number one team by who wins on Saturday.
Nick, I was in Birmingham about a week ago, and somebody walked up to me and said, "Are you coming back for the game?" And it took me a minute to understand what they were talking about. I lived in Alabama for 30 years. Nobody ever asked me if I was going to an Alabama basketball game. In terms of tickets, I'm sure that they are going to be at a premium.
Yeah, they were already expensive. Last I checked was last week, and they're only going to get more expensive if they haven't already. And frankly, this is probably the game to go to because they will play each other again at the end of the regular season. But Neville has 9,000 or so, and Coleman's got about 15,000. So this is probably your better chance if you're a fan of either team to get into the game. But still is going to hurt your wallet pretty good if you're going to try to go to that game.
Nick, we've known you a long time, and we have a really interesting path. We got to know each other through both of our relationship and deep friendship with Cecil Hurt. And I say that because we care a lot about you, and we were all stunned today when you shared some news on social media about something that you are going through. I'll read it for those of you listening on radio. This is from Nick. "Cancer was the last thing I was thinking about at 27. Nick, I felt a little better when I finished reading everything, but I want you to share with us what you shared with many, many people today about what you are currently going through.
Yeah, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer early in the year, which, as I wrote, at 27 is the last thing that you're thinking about. But it turns out it's the most common type of cancer for young men. And I had no idea. I mean, we hear about prostate cancer all the time for men, for older men, but testicular cancer is not something that had really been across my radar, but feel super blessed, even though I got the diagnosis, found out that last week that I'm already in remission. So super grateful. It's been about as best case scenario as possible. With that, and of course, it takes a couple years before you can be officially cured. But as of right now, no cancer is spread, and so really, it's just been. I decided to share it because I hope that other people my age become aware of it, and not just my age, but all ages. I mean, I've heard from people across the board ever since I just shared that this morning, who've either have or have had cancer, or specifically testicular cancer. And so, yeah, it's something that I just didn't know much about, and I hope that I can help other people understand, know what to look for.
And Nick, you've had so many things going on in your life. We got to be very close during the final days of Cecil Hurt's life. You ended up getting married a couple years ago. Just turned out, I didn't even realize. I was talking to your father-in-law about people. We were talking about a foundation for Cecil, and I happened to bring your name up a couple of years ago, and he said, "Oh, well, he's marrying my daughter." We know who he is. It's just remarkable all the things at such a young age that you've accomplished. You're a J school grad from Mizzou. You've done so much, but when something like this hits you, there are no easy words to describe it, but you seem so intent on not only recovering as you are, but to making sure others understand and maybe their own lives are saved.
Yeah, I think we hear so much from coaches, Paul, that we're around, that talk about the mental game that they go through with their athletes and trying to help them. And I think with anything, you realize that some of those things they say are cliche, but it really also is just a case of how much you can find the good in certain situations. How can you reframe something mentally? And for me, that was, okay, how can I find the good in this before I even knew how bad it was or wasn't? And for me, it was a case of, okay, what good can I find in this moment, in this week? And really, it's just, and I'm very fortunate that it was a great prognosis, but yeah, what good can come of it? And I hope even if just one person gets helped by the Twitter thread talking to you about this, to me, it's all worth it.
Well, Nick, everyone, as you already know, you've probably been inundated. I know you have from your many friends and followers. Continued success and moving on and recovering from this and dealing with it. And also, many people I know are also thanking you for sharing the message. Be well. We'll talk to you very soon. Nick, thank you.
Thanks so much, Paul, for having me, and thanks for letting me talk about it, and have a great rest of your week.
You bet. Nick Kelly joining us from Alabama, talking about his own situation and many more. We'll take a short break here. We are going to continue with your phone calls in just a moment.
You're listening to the Paul Feinbaum Show podcast.
Okay, we will talk to some very well-known women. How about Madison Booker, one of the great players in America? Big part yesterday in taking down South Carolina, and Charlotte Wilder. We've had her before. Talking Super Bowl. How about, you seen this story? Mike DeWine, who's also been a guest on this show before, has chosen, his lieutenant governor became the senator, I think, from Ohio, replacing J.D. Vance. He has named Jim Tressel as lieutenant governor. Remember the guy in the sweater vest? Fired at Ohio State in 2011. Remember in the Tattoo-gate scandal? Left in disgrace. But now he's lieutenant governor of Ohio. What a state. We are back. And Judge John is up next in Tennessee.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for taking my call. This is the arrogant judge calling. And I wanted to commend a player for recognition. Miss Amy Brown graduated from Livingston Academy. She was All-State. She was three times the recognized player for Tennessee. She went to Louisiana Tech and was very successful. They played North Carolina in the finals of the NCAA tournament, and she was the high scorer for Louisiana Tech. Unfortunately, a North Carolina player hit a three at the last second to beat them, and Amy was all the time hollering at another player, "Get your hands up in front of that shooter." So anyway, that's the kind of person Amy was. She's also had a great career as an educator, and she's now at Tennessee Tech in administration. So I just thought that she needed some recognition.
Well, Judge, thank you. Eddie Conyers doesn't need any more recognition than he's already received on the show, but we're going to give it to him.
Hey, Paul. Nice talking to you again, buddy.
Welcome back.
I was just so proud yesterday for Jalen. I remember, Paul, the very first time I saw him at Alabama practice, we were coming off the field with the other officials, Fred Cody and the Tom Dunn, so guys that officiate with me. And I said, who the hell was that? I think his number was 2 at that time. I said, who the hell was that number 2? And we didn't really even know. But Jalen, if nothing else, he's totally in control all the time. He doesn't get too high, too low, and he's just a great quarterback. Steve showed yesterday, and a great individual too, by the way.
Well, tell us about that moment in time, because he came from Houston, if I remember correctly, didn't he?
Yeah, and his daddy came one day to practice the same, and he and I talked. They were just very, very nice people, and but his demeanor. Well, I've been there. I started with Pat Trammell, if you can imagine, and I've seen a lot of quarterbacks, but you can always sense, you kind of sense that Jalen had the it factor. He's in control. He knows what he's doing. He doesn't get too high or too low. He's just a perfect quarterback, and he was he's deserving of everything he's gotten.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Eddie, I'll tell you the story to show you. You got to see it all, and Jalen was starting to lose his grip, as you remember, down at the Sugar Bowl when Alabama played Clemson in the national semifinals.
Oh, yeah.
And the rumor was that he was going to get replaced, and it was kind of an ugly game, and Alabama really didn't need to do very much to beat that team. But I remember the next week we were in Atlanta, and media days on Saturday. Every player's there, and I walked by, and I knew Jalen pretty well. He was literally sitting by himself because everyone knew he was done. He was about to get replaced by Tua Tagovailoa. And I went up and talked to him. I said, "How's it going?" And he just shook his head. He said, "Man," he said, "this is brutal." But he had to do it. He was the starting quarterback of record in the national championship game 2 years in a row. Of course, we all know how that game ended. But he never, and you saw him the next year. I'm curious what you can tell us. After he gets replaced by Tagovailoa, everyone knows he's not going to start. What was he like at practice back then? I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this.
All I'd say it again. Jalen stays at a kind of a calm level basically all the time. Of course, he'd rather be played. He wouldn't like to be replaced, but he realized that was the best thing for the team, and he was for that. Jalen's just a consummate quarterback, as far as I'm concerned. He's very good.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I mean, I've always, I think the way he handled that, and then as everyone knows, he came in the SEC championship game and literally saved the season for Alabama when Tua went down and got them to the national champ. By the way, I wish they hadn't been in that national championship game that year, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
that was the 28-point loss in California to Clemson. I think they'd have been better off losing to Georgia.
You're so perceptive, Paul. But anyway, Devontae had a great game, too. That was just two really fine individuals, not only great athletes and great football players, but
Eddie, I'm not going to identify the person. I was talking to somebody earlier, and I said, that was really cool that Devontae Smith, and the person said, I got to be careful of gender here. The person said, he played at Alabama, right? I said, yeah. He said, was he any good? I said, other than the fact that he caught the winning pass in the national championship game as a freshman and later won the Heisman Trophy, he really wasn't very good at all.
Devontae obviously was very good. One day he was coming off the field, and Paul, I came up to him and I called him Ravonde. I didn't even know his name, but I know it now. But anyway, Paul, it's always a pleasure.
Eddie, it is such a pleasure. I mean, I don't know why we need to get a sponsor for this segment every day.
Okay.
I'll tell you what. I'll call my friend David Upton at Craneworks, and we'll just sponsor the Eddie Conyers segment. Remember when? Remember that Alan Jackson song?
Oh yeah, very much so.
Okay.
Well, I do go back a long way, Paul. We're all the way back to Pat Trammell and seen a lot of quarterbacks, and Jalen's just one of the two top ones, and he deserves everything he's got.
So the first quarterback you covered the first quarterback you dealt with at practice was Harry Gilmer. Is that right?
No, I remember Harry's daddy became a real good friend of mine. His daddy was a carpenter.
Oh, really? And, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Harry had a real funny story one day, Paul. He came by practice. This was after he'd finished his pro career. He was a scout. And he said he was going over there. I talked to him. I said, hey, where you going? He said, I'm going over to Mississippi State. They got a guy we're over there looking at for the pros. A couple of days later, he came back by, and I said, how did it work out with that guy you're talking to? He said, well, it's kind of unusual. Said I went up to his coach and said, his coach said, there's something about this guy people don't know. Said he'll have fits. That he'll start cussing, throwing things around, and hitting people. He kicked him to have a fit. Harris said, you think we could arrange for him to have one of the fits about 2 every Sunday?
That's funny. Eddie, always great. I will hope to see you soon. Thanks, Eddie. Always good to talk to Eddie Conyers, who is 96 years old. For those who couldn't quite pick up the story, he has been one of the officials at Alabama's practices for about 60 years. That's how he knows all these stories. Otis is up next. Hello, Otis.
Good afternoon, Paul. Newsflash, I hear that an Anvil tablet is going for $20 a pop this morning. Paul, do you remember a college football radio announcer in yesteryear by the name of Kern Tips?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. He announced the whole Southwest Conference Saturday night game of the week, and it was sponsored by the Humble Oil and Refining Company, which, of course, today now is Exxon. And you can get him on the internet. And back then, when you pulled into that Humble station, you could buy a 78 record with all his top game calls. Remember them 78s?
Yes, sir.
All right. Hook 'em horns, hook 'em lady Longhorns.
You bet. Hey, thanks so much. We're up against a break. We have more to say about the Lady Longhorns, talking to Madison Booker a little bit later on. That mammoth victory yesterday over number 1 South Carolina. We're coming right back.
You're listening to the Paul Feinbaum Show podcast.
We're back, and let's start with Bash in Boulder here on our Zoom. Hey, Bash.
Bash, Brother Paul. Man, my first question I got to ask you today is, Paul, why is the Monday after the Super Bowl not a national holiday?
Well, because I think we have quite a few national holidays, starting on January 1st, then we have MLK Day, then we have President's Day. I'm not really sure there's much room for it.
Yeah, I agree with you there. But, I mean, you know what I'm getting at here, Paul. Everyone...
See, Bash, let me jump in here quickly. There are a lot of people who are grown-ups who watch the game and they go to bed and they get up and actually go to work the next day. They're not so high that they can't even find the kitchen from the bathroom. So most of us, Justin, were you able to get up today? You're here. You look pretty good. Yeah, I was able to barely get up today. I mean, I wasn't as high as you, Bash, but I was flying like an eagle.
Hey, I'm not going to say fly, Eagles, fly and jump on the bandwagon like Dwayne would. Now he's a bandwagon.
Is there anybody in America who's not an Eagles fan? I mean, I didn't realize everybody was an Eagles fan going into the game.
Oh, you know why they were Eagles fans, Paul. It's the same reason why Taylor Swift got on TV and got booed by everybody on the Jumbotron. It may not be fly, Eagles, fly for me, Paul, but it is cry, Chiefs, cry. And by the way, something that Trey from Alabama said the other week, saying that don't let John from St. Louis know that Kansas City is technically in Missouri. It's like, Trey, that would be like someone from Pittsburgh chanting for Philadelphia because they're in the same state. They used to have a football team. But on top of that, Paul, let's get a little, before we piss off John again for not mentioning Missouri, let's give him a shout out for losing this weekend to the Texas A&M Aggies at home. At the 2.8 second mark, Paul, that was beautiful. And again, last week when I came on the show and displayed my lovely haircut right out for you, Paul, I went to Peter Burns, and Peter's like, Bash, give me the magic lottery number ticket. Like, what's your next prediction? I told him right here on this air, Paul, I said, the Clemson Tigers are going to upset the Duke Blue Devils, and it's going to set up just like you put at the beginning of the show, Paul. Auburn, Alabama, number 1, number 2 for the biggest game in SEC basketball history. Tell me, Paul, has there ever been a number 1 versus number 2 matchup in the SEC conference?
I don't think. I mean, obviously, I mentioned the 1 versus 2 matchup a couple of years, about 15 years ago, involving one SEC team and 2 current SEC coaches. But I don't think there's ever been a 1 versus 2.
Oh, man. If there had been, I would have assumed it would have been maybe Kentucky and Florida. But because you just pointed out there, it's probably not even the case. One last thing, Paul, before I let you go. I am, just like a bunch of Alabama fans today, celebrating the fact that Jalen Hurts is a Super Bowl champion. But I got to ask you, Paul, at the age of 26 years old, with everything that Devontae Smith has accomplished in his career, is he up there as one of the most accomplished wide receivers of all time, with being the age 26, winning 2 SEC championships, 2 national championships, a Heisman Trophy winner, and now a Super Bowl champion, Paul?
Yeah, there apparently are a couple of people who have done all that, but the list is very small.
To do all that as a wide receiver, Paul, that list is going to be even smaller. But thank you again for always taking my Zoom call and making me display my loyalty to you, my mentor, Bash brother. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day. and roll the inside and cry Chiefs cry.
How original. Let's continue. Dan is up next in New York. Hello, Dan.
Good afternoon, Paul. How are you?
We are doing great. Thank you.
Well, thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to join and talk about this game on Saturday. I am so excited. I can't believe that Alabama and Auburn are just so good this season at basketball. I know Auburn lost on Saturday, but yet they still kept the number one spot. And so we get a 1-2 game, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Listen, Dan, this is not breaking news. Alabama and Auburn started it in 2019 by going to the Final Four. Alabama went, of course, last year.
Right.
I mean, when you talk about the SEC in the Final Four, there was a long stretch. Kentucky went in 2015, and then there was, South Carolina a couple of years later, and then Auburn. But there have not been that many times that it's happened. This is not baseball where the two SEC schools play every year for the championship. This is a little bit different.
Right, exactly. And I mean, you know, it's been the football game for the Iron Bowl for so long, and now this year, Alabama, you know, they lost to Oklahoma, and then Auburn was having a terrible season. So this is exciting with the basketball 1-2. And my prediction is, of course, Alabama will win on Saturday. But thank you for taking my call, Paul, and I hope that you have a fantastic week. And I'll talk to you again soon.
You be well. Take care of yourself. Gil is up next. Hello, Gil.
Hey, is this Paul?
Yes, it is.
I spoke with you about 4 months ago. I had a Paul Bear Bryant story for you, you may recall.
Oh, yes.
But we really did spend our time with me telling you my concerns about the love of pleasure that is being destroyed by the money when it comes to kids going off to college to play ball. I'm a double graduate of LSU and a double graduate of the University of Florida, and I was a professor at A&M.
Yes, sir.
I've seen games at Ben Hill Griffin, Tiger Stadium. I've seen the Sugar Bowl several times and many games at Kyle Field. And as a former high school player and a short-term coach, I love the game, and I enjoy your show. I wish I've had a stroke, so my speaking is not too good.
You sound great. Gil, you sound great. You keep going.
Well, I wanted to bring something up to you that I don't hear very much talk about. And I really believe that you, because of all you've done to build the network interest in your talk show, it's wonderful.
Thank you.
I wish that would be more attention brought to academics. I think y'all could do that without compromising anything. It's very frightening to me to see kids be able to go to school and just transfer right and left and so on. All of these things are driven by the money makers and the people who run things like ESPN. But there needs to be more attention to the academic side. It's a wonderful thing to have a university to go to. And some way, somehow, we need more attention to that. If you watched, I'm sure you did, the Super Bowl as I did, I was very disappointed because it wasn't a good game. I didn't care who would win. I thought it would be a tighter game than that. But I told my son, I said, it's possible it could be a blowout. Let's hope it's not that. If it is, it's going to be Philadelphia is going to blow them out. I don't think that Kansas City can blow out the other team. Anyway, I saw the Sugar Bowl. You mentioned Harry Gilmore a while ago. I saw a Sugar Bowl, and Harold Gilmer was famous for his jump pass. He would take a few steps right real fast and jump in the air to throw a pass. And he was famous for that. And I believe at the same time that he was doing that, Bama had a center, Von Mancha, I believe.
Right, yeah, you're absolutely right. I remember him.
And he was one of these all-time greats as far as the center would go. But I saw that game, and I saw the Sugar Bowl when Texas upset Alabama. I believe it was 25-7. Texas had a little running back named Gib Dawson, and he was dynamite, and he obliterated the Tide, much to the SEC fans. People didn't like that in New Orleans. But whatever, I enjoyed talking with you. And
listen, Gil, you continue to be well, and you sound great, and we look forward to our next conversation. We're up against the break right now. We have a lot to do. So the question about Devontae Smith, others who have won a national championship, a Heisman, and a Super Bowl, Tony Dorsett, that was back in the late 70s, Marcus Allen, Charles Woodson, Reggie Bush, and Devontae. That is a small group of people who have claimed 3 of the most valuable trophies in all of sports. And, of course, Jim from Tuscaloosa.
You're listening to the Paul Feinbaum Show podcast.
I knew Buzz Williams was a great basketball coach at Texas A&M. I did not realize he was the new dean of journalism at the University of Missouri. Over the weekend, that's where he was. And take a listen to this.
All right, thank you, guys. I know a lot of you guys are students. I used to be like you. And I tell our guys this all the time. Make sure you function with... Here's 4 things for you. Ready? How old are you?
19.
All right. I'm assuming you're in the Columbia, Missouri School of Journalism. All right. So here's four things that I write all people that I wish somebody would have told me. Number 1, you're going to type it, or are you just recording it?
I'll type it.
Okay. Read more than you think you should. 2, write down everything, comma, about everything, comma, all the time, period. 3, over the next 10 years, build as many relationships as you can, comma, and learn to connect the dots between those relationships. 4, never turn down an opportunity to learn, comma, or to work. Good luck.
I think he got an advance on my new book. That's exactly the lessons that I have laid out in the about-to-be bestseller. I don't mind him sharing those life lessons. I felt like I was walking down the street and somebody was dictating into their phone. I mean, when do basketball coaches use commas? Susie is up next. She's a teacher. She should know better.
I know better, Paul. I know when to use commas, when not to use commas. Thank you for taking my call. I half day today, and I got home and put it right on, and I always DVR it. So I started from the beginning, and I saw where you put up about Jim Tressel. Wanted to add a little personal thing with the Tressels. I went to college in Berea, Ohio, Baldwin Wallace University, and Jim Tressel's dad was our football coach, and his brother Dick Tressel was in my class. Jim was just a kid, and when the Alpha Tau Omegos we would go over to their house or whatever, Jim would be there, with all the guys who wanted to be hanging around, his big brother and all the guys, kind of cool. And his mother, Eloise, was my advisor for Alpha Phi sorority as treasurer. So I kind of have a neat connection with the Trestles. And, you know, I hated when that happened years ago. I guess you called it the tattoo scandal or whatever. Just knowing that the Trestle family was very held in high esteem. I mean, they were a great, great family, very honest, very religious family. Jim went on to be the football coach at Youngstown University, and, well, then later president, yeah. But he and his dad both won Coach of the Year for their class of school or whatever in the same year. It's kind of cool. So I know no one's probably interested but me, maybe Elliot in Ohio and Jeff in Ohio, you know, those people. But I just thought maybe I'd call and give you my little take on the Trestles.
Well, listen, I'm glad to hear that. I mean, they are. He is a respected figure. He was a college president, as you know, after he left coaching at Youngstown. Thank you very much for the call. Troy is up next in Rolla, Missouri, where remember who was our lady there that used to call in Millie used to call in from Rolla. Hey, Troy.
Yeah.
Do you know Millie?
Who?
Millie. She used to be a regular on the show.
No.
She died.
Oh, did she?
Yeah.
What did she die of?
I think she was elderly, but beyond that, I'm not really certain.
Huh.
I just wanted to make sure you didn't. I just wanted to make sure you didn't have anything to do with that.
No.
Okay. What can we help you with?
Yeah, I was talking to. Hey, what's up?
Thank you for listening to the Best of the Paul Feinbaum Show podcast. Watch the Paul Feinbaum Show weekdays from 3 to 7 Eastern on the SEC Network. Plus, you can listen and watch on the ESPN app.